Hello, everyone. I am Kathryn White, and I am a cancer survivor. And I'm here to talk with you today about how cancer changed my life for the better. And that might sound like a bit of an odd statement to you because maybe you have cancer yourself or you know someone who's had cancer. And we all know that cancer can be very difficult. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. And so, how can we wrap our brains around this idea that cancer has made my life a better place to be? Well, that's what I'm going to talk with you about today. But I'm going to begin by taking it all the way back to when I was 22 years old. So, in 1995, I received a phone call from my parents telling me that my dad had stage 4 colon cancer. I was 22 years old. I was in teachers college. I wasn't really prepared for that information. So I ended up going back home for a couple of weeks to spend with my dad as he was palliative and moving towards the next stage of his life. And I was at his side when he died. So nobody talked to me after that about what things could look like for me. Nobody talked to me about healing my own trauma around that. Nobody talked to me about steps that I could take to be preventative. And of course, back in 1996, the internet was just kind of starting to come out. So there wasn't any Googling to find information on nutrition or mindfulness or exercise or anything like that. So I just went back to my life and put all that aside, put it away for a little while, and got married to my best friend. We're still married 26 years now. We have 2 adult children, 22 and 24-year-old boys, and I moved into being a full-time teacher. So I spent a lot of my life not taking care of myself. I didn't deal with the death of my father and all of the other pieces that went along with that. I spent a lot of time worrying about my husband and my children and worrying about other people's children as a teacher, and didn't really think that I had to take care of myself. I was a marathon runner. I had run 5 marathons prior to getting cancer and some ultra trail races. So I was used to doing hard things and busy things in my body, but I wasn't used to slowing down, and I wasn't used to finding calm and quiet. I wasn't managing my stress. I thought I was eating healthy. I knew I was exercising, but really what I was doing was I was living the rat race. I was living in that cycle of busy. You know, when people say to you, "How are you?" And you're like, "I'm so busy." That was my answer. I'm so busy. And I wore it like a badge of honor, like many of us do, that it's something to be proud of, that we don't take time for ourselves and that we don't go inside and listen to what's happening in our bodies. So my wake-up call came in November of 2014. I was actually going off on a 6-month leave. I was going to take care of myself, take time off from work, travel with my husband, spend more time with my kids, and my body came knocking on the door and telling me that something was happening. And what happened was I started to get really tired. That was my first sign. I got really, really tired. So the school that I was in, my classroom was about 100 yards away from the building. And so for me to walk from my classroom, my portable classroom, into the building, by the time I got to the space of the doorway, I was exhausted. I was so tired. And as I said, I used to run marathons, and there's a lot of training that goes into that, but I had never felt this kind of tired before. But I put it off as, oh, busy and things and all the stuff, and just sort of ignored it. And then I started to have some pain in my left-hand side that I thought was, oh, that's just my pancreas, because I'd had some pancreatitis previously. And then my bowel movements started to change. And I need to just be straight up front with you that because I have had colon cancer, I talk about poop and bowel movements a lot. It's just part of my life, but it's also part of my being in tune with my body. So they started to change, which is one of the key signs that something is happening in the digestive tract. So I thought it was time to go to the doctor and went to him, and he was like, "No, we're not talking about cancer." He wanted me to have like this gastrointestinal issue and didn't listen to me when I expressed that my father had died of cancer and that I was having sort of some symptoms that might be cancer related. He was like, "No, we're not even going to talk about that." So I'll explain a little bit later, but you can imagine how I had to learn how to advocate for myself with a doctor who wasn't prepared to listen to me. So I ended up on a medication that made me very sick, went to a walk-in clinic, and that doctor listened to me and started sending me for the first of many tests that revealed what was coming. I ended up going to meet with a surgeon to have a colonoscopy. Well, I should backtrack. I went to meet with a surgeon to have a gastroscope done because my doctor still wanted me to have a gastro issue. And when I started talking to the surgeon and telling him what was going on in my body, he knew I needed a colonoscopy. And it's that colonoscopy that saved my life. When I woke up from the procedure, my surgeon was at my side and he said, "I couldn't complete the procedure. You have a blockage." And I knew in that moment, as I could feel my heart sinking, that I had colon cancer. It took a little bit of time for them to determine that, but I knew in my heart that that's what it was going to be. And regardless of whether it had turned out to be cancer or not, which it did, they knew that they had to do surgery on my colon because of that blockage. So February of 2015, I went to the hospital with the same surgeon and had a right hemicolectomy. I'd had half of my colon taken out. I was in the hospital for a week, which was the beginning of many visits to hospitals. And it was while I was in the hospital that I had a lot of time to think because as I said, I was in for a week. And I decided while I was in the hospital that I was going to share my story with other people. So I put it out on Facebook and had wonderful responses from friends and family and all of the support. But something else in my mind told me that this was when I needed to decide how I was going to manage this. How was I going to learn how to spend however next long it was going to be having cancer in my body? What was going to be my plan? And my initial plan was to dig in and be determined. And so the first thing that I did to be determined was I decided that I would never take a wheelchair to get out of the hospital. They wanted me to get into the wheelchair and be wheeled down to the door. And I was like, nope, I am going to walk out of here on my own 2 feet. If I have to hold onto the wall or hold on to my husband, I am walking out of this hospital. And I did that for that surgery and for all of the other procedures that were to follow. So I went home and I was doing all of my healing things and trying to just recover from this major abdominal surgery and prepare myself for my meeting with my oncologist. So in 2015, March 2015, I went to our local cancer clinic and met with the most amazing man who has also been a big part of saving my life, my oncologist. My husband and I had decided before we went into that meeting that we were not going to get the numbers. We didn't know exactly what my cancer was. We didn't know exactly what stage things were going to be. But what we knew is that we didn't want anybody else telling us how long I had to live, what statistics were going to determine my mindset of living or not living. So we went in and we just said, we don't want to know. I don't want to know what my numbers are. Every day is a 100% chance of survival. And we dug in and we decided, and we've lived that right up until here I am right now, living that every day is a 100% chance of getting up and moving forward and living life with cancer, which I'll talk about what that looks like as well. So I did end up having stage 4 colon cancer. It was in my colon, it was in my liver, and it was in my lymph nodes. And that's not what I thought I was going to hear. So we were a little bit surprised by that. So we were grateful that we had come up with this plan of how we wanted to already start managing things. But the next part of it was trying to figure out how do we manage our family, because cancer impacts the whole family. We had to go home and tell our sons that it was actually worse than we thought it was, and that there was going to be a lot of stuff happening. I'd already had the colon surgery. Next stage was chemotherapy. There was going to be another surgery. There was a lot starting to happen on the medical side of the house, but we had to try to figure out how to do the human side of the house, how to do our family. How do you do your family with teenage boys with stage 4 colon cancer when in my mind was always, I was with my dad when he died of stage 4 colon cancer. It was a very challenging time for us, but it made us stronger. It brought us together, made us stronger, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit as well. So in April of 2015, I started chemotherapy. I went every second week for that, and I did 5 rounds, and then they gave me what I call time off for good behavior. I responded really well to the chemo. It was difficult for sure. It was hard going in every other week, and there were some things that happened in there physically for me, but I was able to manage it well enough that I was able to take my little chemo holiday to get ready for the next surgery that I had to have. So in between that, in the summer of 2015, my husband and I we just lived. We decided that we were going to do things that we wanted to do. We did some traveling. We had what we called mandatory family fun days, where our children, our teenage boys, had to spend time with us because we really wanted to build memories. We really wanted to have time with our family because we didn't know how much time I really had, that we could have pictures for them to look at, memories for them to come back to remember their mom, and more importantly, to live in that moment and really enjoy our time. And we did. We did a lot of really fun things over that summer, including I went to the East Coast and went to my high school reunion, which was super fun. Everybody there knew what my health situation was, and they were absolutely amazing. My husband went with me because he felt like he needed to just sort of keep his hand on my shoulder and take care of me, make sure I was all right. So 1 week before I had my next surgery, I was at a party in Halifax, Nova Scotia, enjoying myself and getting to see all of my friends for what might have been the last time. So that was a little bit hard to wrap my brain around, the saying goodbye to people, because I didn't know if I would see them again. But I'm glad that I went. It was a very important part of my healing process of being able to do that. So the next week, I walked into the hospital and met with one of the most talented surgeons truly in the world, my liver surgeon. And he took out 2/3 of my liver, my entire right lobe. I had 5 spots on my liver. And I'm very grateful that he was able to do that surgery. It's a very difficult surgery, a very delicate surgery. And he even prepped us with the thought that, the liver surgery in itself might take my life, because that's how risky a surgery it was, which was really difficult to say goodbye to my family going into surgery, knowing that that might be the last time that I saw them. However, I was very blessed to have an amazing surgeon and to come out of that surgery and to learn that even the spots on my liver, he felt were just scar tissue at that time when he got in there, that the chemotherapy had done its work. So again, so grateful for that, the chemotherapy, even though it was making me unwell, that it was doing the job that it was supposed to be doing. And at the end of my 4 days in the hospital, they brought the wheelchair and I said, no, thank you very much. I am going to walk out of this hospital. If I have to hold on to that wall or hold on to my husband, I am going to walk out of here on my own 2 feet, because that was a very important part of my mindset. So I went home and I recovered from the surgery. And in September of 2015, I did 7 more rounds of chemotherapy. And on December the 22nd of 2015, I walked out of the chemotherapy suite and I rang the bell. I was done my chemotherapy. I'd had the last 7 rounds were a little bit harder. I lost some feeling in my fingers. I was losing my eyesight. It was coming and going. I was very tired. I was having a little bit of trouble eating, but not too much. I just was generally feeling exhausted, I think is the best way to describe it. And I was told to just go back out into the world and live my life. They were like, congratulations, you're still here. Go and live your life. And I was like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know who I am anymore. My entire year has been coming to medical appointments, doing surgeries, doing chemotherapy, doing blood work, doing scans and tests, and everything in my life has been determined by my cancer schedule. And now I don't have a cancer schedule. So what do I do? And that was probably one of the hardest pieces. What I had done my husband and I had decided early on that I was going to leave my teaching job. I quit my teaching job, but I like to say I retired myself from it because it sounds much kinder, much gentler, but I quit. I was all done, and I knew that I couldn't go back to that stressful life. That stressful life had made me sick. And there's lots of science on how stress is related to dis-ease in our body and how it creates cellular inflammation, and cellular inflammation is making us sick. And I'm going to talk about some lifestyle things around that as well. But stress is not our friend. And so I knew that going back into a classroom, and they said, you could come back part-time, you could come back like 1/3 time, you could come back every other day. They wanted to have all of these variations for me so that I would come back. And I said, no, I'm all done. My job now, my husband said to me, my job now then was to do everything I could to stay healthy, to rebuild my life, and to live. That I had one job, and that was to survive and keep moving forward. And I took that very seriously. So I quit my job, and I wandered around my house for a year, not knowing who I was. I had lost a number of friends because sometimes people can't cope with illness, and they certainly can't cope with the idea that someone might die from an illness. So there were people who came and went, and that's okay. There are seasons of friendships in our life. It was hard at the time, but I understand now why it was difficult for them too. I had to get my body back in order. I have multiple scars. My abdomen is a bit of a roadmap. There's lots of scarring, scar from where my chemotherapy portocath was, my liver surgery, my colon surgery. It was very traumatic for my body, what it went through. Livers grow back, but they don't grow back in the same way. So there's some spaces in my body that got filled in that weren't before, and then are empty where they would have been filled before. So there's some muscle things going on. It's a lot on top of all of the emotional pieces. And then there's the whole part about my brain. Chemotherapy, people know that they say it causes chemo brain or fogginess. It also causes memory loss. I couldn't initially find words. I couldn't find words like garbage can or sofa or, box. Like very simple vocabulary was no longer in my brain. I would be in the middle of a sentence and I couldn't find what I wanted to say. And I learned how to say to people, because they would want to be helpful and fill in. And I learned to say, no, you need to let me try and find it. And I would stop and look up into my brain and try to find the word, because I knew that I had to fix my brain. I needed to rewire it. I started knitting. I was doing puzzles. I was doing crossword puzzles just to reactivate my brain and start building these neural pathways that had become basically clogged up from the chemotherapy, from the one drug, the oxaliplatin, is platinum, the metal platinum, and it adheres to things in your body, including brain cells. So I really struggled with the brain piece and trying to put all of that back together. And I developed these strategies. One of my strategies is telling people to wait if I need to think of something. The other strategy is to walk around with my finger up if I have to remember something, because sometimes moving from room to room, even now, 7.5, almost 8 years out, I still forget things. And I always tell people, please don't start a sentence with remember when you said, because I don't remember. And this is my reality. This is one of the things that has happened with having had cancer, but I'm not angry about it. I don't resent it. I don't get frustrated as much anymore, because I've accepted that that's part of my new me. And so I just have kept moving forward from that. But that 2016 year was really hard, because all of those pieces were so new and so raw, and I didn't have anywhere to be. I didn't have an identity anymore. And even the medical system didn't have me coming in as much. I felt very like I was on my own. So I just did the best that I could with spending time with my family, again, connecting with friends, the ones that were still around, and just started traveling with my husband as much as I could so that I could enjoy my life. Then 2017 rolled around, And I started to get really curious about what had happened. So while I was going through the process of cancer, we made the very conscious choice to not get on Google, to not try to find answers and solutions on the internet, because there's so much information and there's so much misinformation. And we just put our faith 100% in our doctors, in our team, that they knew what was best for me and that that's what I had to do. But I got very curious, not about why did this happen to me or how did this happen to me, because that was irrelevant. That was the past and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't change it. So instead, I got curious about what can I do to heal my brain, to heal my body? How can I get better? Because my body had a lot of trauma, as I mentioned. And I learned that food is a very important part of our life. And I was actually very surprised that I didn't know as much about food as I thought I did, because I had been teaching health in public school also. But I took a culinary nutrition course that dealt with the really detailed pieces of food and why we need to change how we eat. And I was completely blown away by this. So I became a culinary nutrition educator. I created a little business called Positively Wholesome, which I thought was very cute. And I started teaching people how to cook and how to eat healthy. I felt like I had this responsibility as a cancer survivor to share with people that there are things that you can do so that you don't get sick. So I started coaching people and working with them on designing meal plans to help them be healthier, and loved that. It was fantastic. And I did it right up until the pandemic. Took it online for a little while, but in 2020, things changed a little bit. I'll get to that. So in 2018, I was still kind of wandering around my house. I'd figured out the nutrition piece a little bit, but I still was very broken on the inside. I hadn't dealt with my trauma, with the grief that I had over what had happened to me, in me, and felt like I was very lost. So I ended up going to yoga teacher training. I didn't intend to become a yoga teacher, but I went there to try to learn how to feel my body. And what I learned was how to find my breath. And we all breathe every day automatically, but so often we're not connected to our breath. And our breath is such a powerful tool for healing, for calming, for stress reduction. And it was the perfect place for me to be, because at that time they found a lung metastases. And the weekend before I graduated from my yoga teacher training, I actually went and had a tumor taken out of my lung. So I have another big, beautiful scar on my body that reminds me every time I turn and look in the mirror how important the breath is, and what a gift our breath is, and what a gift it is to be able to connect the breath and the body to find peace and calm. And then in 2020, I became a certified holistic cancer coach. I started the training, and in 2021, I graduated from the program, because I knew that as we went inside in the pandemic and had to get really quiet, things started coming up, and I started to think more about what I was going to do in the next step of my life. And I thought that it was time to deal with my cancer story and take it out in a way that was more than nutrition courses and teaching yoga. And so I became a cancer coach and started my new business, Kathryn White Wellness, and started working with people. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, about how to live with cancer. And just to wrap up the whole health history stuff, in January of this year, I ended up with another lump in my abdomen. And the day before I turned 50, I had another cancer-related surgery. So it's been a bit of a ride for my poor body, but it's bounced back well, and I love it and I nurture it. And so I want to share with you, through all of those pieces that I've been through in terms of the physical, I want to share with you how I have taken this to make my life a better place for me to be. Because before cancer, I told you I was a very busy person, but I was also a very angry person. I hadn't dealt with my stuff, including the death of my father, and I didn't know how to manage my emotions as I do now. And so I had a lot of life lessons that I needed to learn, and they've helped me to become a better person, an entirely different person, actually. So, how did I overcome all of this to become who I am today? And I am still learning and growing. By no means am I a perfect person. I started out by accepting my diagnosis. I didn't get um, into denial. I was like, okay, this is what I have. This is what we're doing. I'm going to trust my doctor. I'm going to trust the process, and we're just going to do this. As I mentioned, I didn't get the numbers. I decided that knowing other people's numbers was not going to serve me, because the statistics basically are built around other people's numbers. And there's the people who unfortunately don't make it, and then there's the people who do make it, and then there's all the people in between, and that creates this average. And we can't live in the statistics of other people with cancer, because cancer is very individual. It is individual to each person. If you lined up 5 people with breast cancer, let's say, and they all had the exact same diagnosis of breast cancer, each of their cancers is very, very different. And that comes from what you ate as a child, how you were raised, where you lived. Did you have chemical exposures? Did you exercise? Who your peer group was? Do you have grief or trauma that you're holding on to? There are so many factors that create what we call the physical terrain in our body, that to paint everybody with the same paintbrush of this is how we treat cancer, it's not that simple. And that's what I learned in going through this, is that everybody is different. And so not getting the numbers made sense, even though I didn't know it at the time, that this was what statistics were all about. Not getting the numbers made sense because I didn't want to be somebody else's numbers. And I've since asked my oncologist, okay, so now I'm ready to hear it. What are my statistics? What would my situation have been? And he just said, you're an outlier. There's no statistics for you. I am outside of that frame, and I'm blessed to be there and grateful to be there. So not getting the numbers was a very important part of my process, I believe. And that led to me believing that every day was a 100% opportunity of living life and enjoying life and having this beautiful gift of being a human, having a human experience. I learned that living, instead of living a prescribed view of how I was supposed to live, but choosing to live in my own way, was important. That the people who were telling me that, but you're sick and you shouldn't be doing that you should be resting, you should just be quiet, just let your body heal. That's not how our body heals. Our body needs things from us that include movement and healthy eating and positive mindset. And I didn't want to be the sick person. I wanted to be the person who was trying to just have as much of a normal life as I could. So when I was in the hospital for my first surgery, I decided that I was going to run another marathon. And in 2017, almost 2 years, 2 years after I started my second round of chemotherapy, I ran my 6th marathon. And people that I know across Canada friends from across the country came and ran with me. And it was a beautiful moment to celebrate life and to celebrate that you can do hard things. And I chose to do some of the hard things when I was going through cancer. And that allowed me, again, to grow as a person and to believe that you don't have to be your diagnosis. You don't have to be what the media portrays a cancer patient to be: loss of hair and gray and sick and losing weight. And there's so many other things to being a person with cancer that they don't show, and that we don't have to be. We get to be who we choose to be when we are living with cancer. I changed how I ate. I cut out sugar, I cut out processed foods, I have reduced my alcohol consumption significantly. I eat a whole foods plant-based diet because I know that that's what my body needs. I stopped eating foods that are full of chemicals and toxins and preservatives because I love my new liver, and my new liver needs me to love it by not overloading it with toxins. So changing how I ate is a significant part of how I am able to be here today. And it's a significant part of what I do with my clients. I managed my stress. I learned to manage my stress. I learned how to breathe by going through yoga. I learned how to move my body in a gentle way, in a way that was connected to my breath and connected to my emotions, and have this kind, nurturing perspective towards my body rather than a go, go, go drive. And it really has made a huge difference for me physically and emotionally and mentally. And I found gratitude and mindfulness. And that came from the yoga teacher training. And it is part of my everyday life. It has allowed me to look at life from a very different perspective, waking up every single day and being grateful. And it can be grateful for the sun coming up. It can be grateful for the colors are changing on the trees. It can be grateful for being alive. It doesn't matter. Gratitude doesn't have to be measured by how big or small it is. Gratitude is about what you feel in your heart and what keeps you moving forward every day. So I live a much more positive life. I'm not that angry young woman anymore. I know how to regulate my emotions. And I've also learned that there is a different way that you can look at life, but you just have to figure out how to get there. And as I said, I reinvented myself. I put teaching aside. It was a season in my life and I let it go. And I stepped into teaching in a different way, which is cancer support coaching. So what I've learned in all of this is that the medical world does the medical world really well. They know what they're doing. They know what the plan is. They know where to send you. They know how to get you to your appointments. They know how to do all of the tests and everything. But what they don't do well, in my case at least, what I didn't have was guidance on how to live with cancer. How to live with cancer outside of the medical world, how to come home and face my children and tell them that I had a potentially fatal, statistically fatal cancer diagnosis, and then keep moving forward. They didn't tell me what to eat. When I asked, what should I eat? They said, anything you can keep down, but I wasn't sick from food. I wanted someone to tell me, you need to eat this, and this is why you need to eat it. And nobody gave me that. They didn't teach me how to manage my everyday life. And that's the piece that I think is so important, where we can take that medical world and our everyday life and bridge the gap between those two worlds. Like if you imagine your favorite bridge or a river that you like to walk across with stepping stones or planks on the bridge, each of those stones or planks is something that you can do to get yourself to this place of the life that you want to be living, the everyday world outside of the medical world. There are things that you can do. And so I took this lack of guidance and have made it into why. It's my why. Why did I become a cancer support coach? Because people need help. I needed help and it wasn't there. And so I think that I feel like my role and my responsibility as a survivor of stage 4 colon cancer is to share what I've learned with other people so that people can see that there is a different way. And just as an aside, it's a personal choice, but I don't use the language around fighting and battling and kicking cancer's, you know what. I use a very softer type of language when I'm talking around cancer because our bodies hear everything we tell them. And I want my body to hear me telling it that I love it, that I am not angry at it for getting sick, that my body didn't want cancer. So why would I be angry at it? I want my body to know that I love it and that I'm here for it and that I'm nurturing it, and that instead of focusing on being sick, I'm going to focus on being healthy. And you heard me say I've had multiple surgeries. I have had metastases. It didn't end when I walked out of chemotherapy. And it wasn't always easy moving into those next steps and scans every 3 months and then scans every 6 months. And now I'm on the 1-year scan plan because my cancer has come back. But I had a doctor say to me, that if I could wrap my brain around the idea that it's living with a chronic illness, which essentially cancer is a chronic illness, much like someone who has diabetes, that you learn to manage the tools that you need to have to keep your life moving forward. So if I could learn to live with cancer, it would make the process easier. So when there were hiccups, when there were things that happened, it wasn't a crisis. It wasn't a everybody goes into crisis mode and panic mode. It was, okay, this is part of the process and my medical team has got me. This is my belief system. This is what I teach my clients, because then you know that there's like this foundation in place and that there's no big shocks and surprises. It's like, okay, we know this is a possibility and it's happened. Now, how are we going to manage it? And that was one of the hugest lessons, I think. And I'm grateful to that doctor for giving me that perspective, because it allowed me to move into learning how to reframe the thoughts in my mind, learning how to remember that my breath can support me when I'm getting stressed or anxious or overwhelmed. And it taught me that my body is my friend and I shouldn't speak to it in a negative way or be angry at it. What I've also learned is that I really need to listen to my body, and I invite you to do the same thing. Listen to the whispers of your body. Our bodies are so smart. They want to be healthy. They want to heal. And when we listen to them and give them what they need, starting with something is wrong, I need to do something about this, to I don't think that that food is the best food for my body, our bodies are so grateful. And then they can heal and be stronger so that we can keep moving forward. I've learned to trust my intuition, which is part of listening to my body. Something doesn't feel right. And I call my medical team and we take a look at it and we find resolution. It's not okay to not advocate for yourself. You have to be your own best advocate. If you're listening to your body and you're trusting your intuition, then you're going to want to advocate for yourself. I had to tell my doctor that we had to talk about cancer. And when he didn't want to talk about cancer, I talked to the doctor who would. And he sent me to the surgeon who heard me. And that's why I'm here today, because we didn't stop at, no, we're not talking about cancer, it's just something else. We're like, no, I think we need to talk about this. I've learned that you don't have to be your diagnosis. As I've said, cancer is a medical condition happening in the body. It's a diagnosis based on what doctors know about us and our cells, but it's not your identity. I said to my husband very early on, I don't want to be known as Kathryn, the cancer survivor. At that point, I just wanted it to be done and put it in a box on a shelf and never deal with it again, which is not a healthy resolution to a problem like this. But it's not my identity. It's now just who I am. It's part of my life story, and I didn't allow it to control my life story. I've learned that you can do hard things, that inside of each of us, we have more tools than we realize. My household was not an easy household growing up. That might have led to some of the reason why I got colon cancer. I moved a lot as a kid, always had to make new friends, walk into a new classroom, start over again. And I resented that piece of my life for a very long time, until I realized that that is what helped me get through cancer. Because I had seen hard things before and I had done hard things before. And I already had these tools inside of me. I just didn't know how to access them. And that's what I do in coaching, is I help people access what they already have. I don't tell people what to do. I guide people to finding their own answers and to finding what they have inside of them based on your own life story that you can bring out when you need something to support you. I've learned that you can reinvent yourself, that you don't have to live a prescribed script, and you can change the script partway through your life and it's not a crisis. I thought I could never be anything more than a teacher. But I am a teacher. I'm just teaching in a different way. And I absolutely love the way that I'm able to teach other people. I loved my teenagers, they were fantastic, but this is a different way to provide the same kind of teaching, just it's in a different platform, that's all. And something that I've learned that's really important is that asking for help is a superpower. We didn't ask for help because we didn't know how to ask for help. We didn't know what to say to people. We didn't know what we needed help with. So when somebody says, oh, what can I do to support you? How can I help you? You might not even know what you need. Or if you want somebody to help you, they might not know what you need. I have a podcast called the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast. And one of my more recent episodes was called When They Just Don't Get It. Because people don't get it. If you haven't had cancer, you don't get it. And if they do get it, it's because they're living in the same place, and we don't want people to be in that place with us. So when you ask for help, when you understand that you can ask for help, it's like taking back a little bit of that control that's taken away when you're given a cancer diagnosis, because we lose control, we feel disempowered. But you can start to tell people what you need. Actually, I need you to make this recipe that my coach gave me or that I really like because it's healthy and it's going to support my body. Actually, you can come with me and go for a walk. You could watch my kids so that I can have a bath uninterrupted. Like, there's things that you can tell people that you need. You just have to know that you need them, and you have to be brave enough to ask for it. I've also learned that now is all we have. Right now, in this moment, is exactly what we have. Not living in the past and not projecting into the future. The past is done. And as I said, I mentioned that I don't live in the past. I don't ask why I got cancer. And I don't live in the future of this stress of, oh my God, I might get it again, because I have had it again and again and again. I live in the present because this is where we're meant to be living, right here and right now. So all of that to say, I became a cancer support coach from all the things that I have learned. And what I want to share with you is what I do. So I am a certified holistic cancer coach. I work with people who have received a cancer diagnosis, who are actively in cancer treatment, or who have been told, like myself, to go on and go live your life now that it's done, and they don't know what to do. I help people in my 3-month Thrive with Cancer coaching process so that they can understand that you don't have to be your diagnosis and that there is life with cancer. And we don't know what the duration of that is. So then let's make it the best life that we can right now. So I get on weekly calls with people and with my clients, and we talk about how they're feeling, what they have coming up physically, emotionally, tests, surgeries. We talk about their family. We talk about what to eat. I give them meal plans. I give them yoga videos. I give them meditations. I give them whatever it is that they need to feel supported. And sometimes I don't give them anything but my space. I just sit quietly and allow them to feel the things that they're feeling, because there's a lot. It's a lot having a cancer diagnosis. But it doesn't have to be done alone. It can be done with the help and the support of someone like me, and there are other cancer coaches out there that want to work with people with cancer because we get it. I get it so very, very deeply. And I understand that it's difficult. And that's why I became a cancer support coach, and that's why I'm here for you if this is something that you would like to bring into your life, because you don't have to do it alone.